So I'm Katie Bignell. I'm founder of Festival Formula. We're a consultancy company that helps filmmakers navigate the worldwide circuit with their film. So we're basically helping them figure out how high they can aim for on the festival circuit worldwide, but also kind of pulling out niches and assets from their film and basically making them spend their budget a lot better, because the festival side of things is not cheap and is also full of rejection. So we're trying to increase potential selection but reduce waste of money and a lot of rejection from festivals perhaps they weren't suited for to begin with.
No matter the medium, the creative endeavor would not be anywhere without the innovations, collaborations, and sheer investments of those who want to see it succeed. So here, we aim to take you beyond the creative process and to pick the brains of those who aim to bring art to the next level, going behind the scenes.
Now, are you, I came to understand from the press release and everything that you guys specialize in short films. Is that not fair?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. So focus solely on short films. There are a lot of filmmakers that are kind of carving out their voices by making short films before features and wanting to work in TV. And also you can have a little bit more of an exploratory journey with a short film because, there's so many film festivals around the world. A lot of them are short specific. So, it just means there's more potential there to get the film seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious. I'd love for you to take us through your process a little bit. How do you select a client? What are you looking for when you take them on?
So we're very generous with our time. We watch everything for free to consider for our slate. And there are 3 people in the company that are viewing and considering the films. And essentially, when we're watching a film, we're first of all seeing it's a certain quality, that it is kind of strong enough to be on a competitive circuit. But we're also looking at, can we see an audience for this? Like, is there a particular asset that's screaming out to us? So we might watch, and we take on everything from, horror to student to animation, experimental dance, everything. But the sole purpose is when we're watching it, does this get us excited about where we can strategize for it? So we might be watching a film and we kind of go, well, we know it's a debut filmmaker, so that's an asset for us to explore. It's a French production, perhaps, or it's a cross genre, so it might be a comedy horror. And what makes our brains buzz as strategists is we suddenly go, oh, that festival likes that stuff, or that festival has a category for that. So when we are watching films, we kind of put aside our own tastes. Because it's not about, do we like a film? It's about, can we see a journey for this film? And if we give feedback on everything, even if we are saying no to a film. We just like to give filmmakers a little bit back of, some guidance, because sometimes when we're saying no, it's not necessarily because we think the film is not strong enough. Sure. Sometimes they've done too many submissions and we don't want them to spend any more. And we're very, very honest about that. Sometimes we might look at a film and just say, actually, you can go for our smaller package because you've covered a lot. You just need to fill in the gaps and we can help you with that. But if we are interested in the film, we then kind of invite the filmmaker to have a video call for us, still for free. And that's for us to discuss and expand on our feedback, but also to answer any questions they have. And there's no obligation. It means we speak to a lot of filmmakers. It means that we see a lot of work. But it's just because, we want to be able to give the filmmaker the opportunity that, in an industry where everything costs money, we kind of want to make it free up until the point where we're like, let's work on your film together.
You might be the one group that watches more films than me.
It is. I mean, I do always get asked that question, how many films do you watch a year? And I'm like, I don't even want to think about it because it's like hundreds. I mean, even so far, like just from the beginning of this year till now, I think we totaled it up and we've considered about 400 films. And, and when you're meeting those filmmakers, like your week is very busy, because you are watching films, you're writing feedback, and then you're having conversation with them. And then if they sign up, then it's about, then we kind of having more in-depth conversations with them. But it's really exciting because sometimes you can see something like a jewel in the rough where it's always a filmmaker. It's like, I don't think I've made something good. I don't think it's worth it. And then we watch it and we're like, this is amazing. Like you should be aiming higher, So it's a real interest. It's a niche job, but it's a really interesting one. Yeah.
How green does a film have to be for you? Like not having gone out on a circuit before, or are you okay with it having gone through circuits, maybe even won some awards? Where do you stand in terms of if a film has done something else outside of what you are doing for it?
Absolutely fine. I mean, we have a variety of films that come to us. We get a lot of films that have perhaps tried the circuit, not really had any success, and they kind of want to be told, what they're doing wrong, or are there anything that they're not really considering. We have films that come to us completely fresh, like really green, like they've literally only been screened to the cast and crew. And then we get some films that kind of have got a few screenings under their belt, and they're just like, we don't know where to go next. So we essentially, that's why we watch everything for free, because we also ask people to send us their previous submissions. And then therefore we can gauge like how much have they spent, how high have they been aiming, or how low have they been aiming. And we can we take it case by case. And, sometimes we'll look at film in the previous submissions and we'll say like, yeah, we understand why you submitted to those festivals, but they're not really suited for your film. They're a bit too high, so let's kind of refocus and kind of go here. And then sometimes it's the other way around. We'll watch a film and we'll be like, you're aiming way too low. You should be aiming higher than this. So it really is kind of no one size fits all, which is why it's quite exciting when you watch a film and then you kind of go, oh, they haven't looked here. Like, why is that? And then kind of being able to give that advice is just really, it's really fruitful.
Nice. I'm wondering, you mentioned this just now in a little bit of your statement there. You said, what is the biggest mistake you see indie filmmakers making right now?
It's submitting to the tried and tested big stalwart festivals. We're trying to dismantle this idea that there is one route for every film, which generally is, filmmakers talk about it in tiers. Like in the first year, I'm going to aim big for the top tier festivals. I'm going to wait to hear back from them. And then the second year, I'm going to do the smaller ones. And what we're here to do is kind of say like, well, maybe your film isn't suited to those big festivals. And we can often tell because we're dealing with those big festivals, and previous program is announced. You can look at it, and a filmmaker has to be very honest about their own work and kind of be like, is my film for Berlinale? I don't know. Let's have a look at the program, and chances are it's not. So what we're trying to say to filmmakers is don't make that common mistake, which is spending money on festivals that are really not wildly suited for your film, then getting pissed at all the rejection you get, and then kind of buying into this idea that the circuits are fixed. You've got to know someone to get your film selected, and nobody watches the films, and then kind of feel really burnt before you've even actually tried the festivals that are really wanting your film and perhaps better suited. So that's what we often see, is people spending money in the wrong places. And it's not good for your mental health, because obviously, you're spending money, and then you're also hearing no a lot, which you naturally will hear no a lot as part of the circuit because it's so competitive. But you can dial down a little bit and kind of really save money and not kind of sit on the film for too long. So that's the biggest one, is if filmmakers aiming for those festivals that perhaps are just too high for their film or not suited. But we realize that, when you've made your baby, you really want it to kind of send it to the best school, and we get that. But, sometimes you've got to be very honest about the work you've made, and be a bit more realistic, which we are seeing a change of filmmakers doing now, which is great. But I think there's always that what if, I've got to buy a lotto ticket to play the lottery. So, but yeah, I think it's just a misconception of the festivals having a set route that you have to do it one size fits all, and it doesn't. There's so many film festivals out there.
And and it's not always the film that's the problem. It's the festival has had so many of these types of films before. There's so many things that a programmer has to consider, and it's not always because this film is super great. I know a lot of programmers, and they're like, I talk to them all the time about their selection process, and they talk about how upset they were that they couldn't get this one film in there because they really loved it, but it was just so like either the subject matter was not suited for the festival, or the festival was going in a different direction, or it was trying to do this or that, and it just didn't fit into that programming. And I think a lot of times as filmmakers, as artists, we take it so personal, and it's not personal most of the time.
Not at all. No, it's true. We know a lot of programmers, and they dread that day when they have to send out the notifications because, I think as well, I mean, it's part of a bigger conversation, but, it's very common to not get feedback about why your film didn't get in. And, after doing this, my 21st year of being a strategist, and we've seen so many changes. And, two of the big changes are there are so many film festivals now, there's too many, but there's also so many filmmakers making work. So festivals that used to get 200 submissions now get 2,000. And they're not always increasing the amount of programming slots they have, because to do that, you need venue hire, liability insurance, you need sponsors, so it's really tough. And I would say perhaps it's tougher if you made a straight down the line drama, because that's the most common piece of work made in a competitive sense. But also, if you've got a documentary about a current issue, you're not going to be the only documentary that's dealing with that. So from a programming perspective, they've got to figure out, well, what works for our audience? And they're going to know their audience better than anyone. They're going to know what blocks sell the strongest, which ones, work at that time of day. But if you've got, we hear from programmers in documentary shorts and documentary features that if there's a local issue that's gone on, there's going to be like 10, 15 films in the pile that are about the same thing. So they then have to go, well, which one makes sense? Which one's going to engage our audience? And they can't play multiple films about the same thing. So it really is kind of like trying to build a jigsaw puzzle with the pieces you don't know what they are yet. And for a programmer, it's a very skilled job, but it's also very harsh, because you're right. There are programmers that, don't sleep because they're like, oh, I've got to send out the rejections tomorrow, and I really love that film. And you might be lucky, you might get a personalized rejection where it will kind of talk to you about your film, but it can be bittersweet, because a filmmaker can be like, oh, they really love my film, but they didn't select it. So it can be a double-edged sword for that area.
I remember going out, and this, I'm so dated. I was making films 25 years ago. So going out at that time was impossible. There was not even close to as many film festivals as there are now. And going out there and I remember getting a letter like that where it's like, we liked this, but we think you're too green right now. We'd like to see you do something else. And when you do something else, you have a free pass to submit to our festival, kind of thing, which I think was very nice. That gives you hope a little bit. So I think you're right. It's never personal. And I mean, maybe, well, I couldn't say it's never personal, but 99.9% of the time it's not personal.
Yeah. And also, like, as you say, there are so many film festivals now. And, when I started, it was without a box. We were sending physical screeners. We were sending VHS tapes in the post and DVDs, filling in forms by hand, and going to the post office. And I live in a small village in the UK, and my postmaster used to love it, because I'd come with like bags. And he'd be like, where are we sending stuff today? And I'm like, India, Australia, Germany, Canada. And he's like, amazing. But it's definitely, there are more festivals now than there ever has been. But there are more niche festivals too. But there are also, in the mix, a lot of untoward festivals, a lot of awards mills, so it's definitely reflected how many filmmakers are making content now, because, back then you were shooting on film, so it was more expensive. Festivals, believe it or not, were more expensive back then, which filmmakers don't realize, but it's because it's so easy to submit to a festival now, and you're submitting to more. So you think it's more expensive, but it was definitely a little bit of a clearer path back then, because not as many festivals, more premiere stipulations. So you kind of had a little bit of a guide of, I'm going to try there first. If I don't get in there, then I can go here. But it's overwhelming. Like, there's just a lot to consider.
I was part of the DV revolution, so you always had to put your film down onto analog, because nobody had digital processors at that point. So so I totally feel that pain, and it's interesting. I'm curious what you think about the quality of short film right now, because I think over the last few years, I've actually it's really hard for me when I do a top 10 list to not include a short film, because I think at least the last 4 years, I've seen a short film that I think has been better than any feature film I've seen in that year, and it's very difficult to not recognize that. But it's also very difficult for people to see these films if they're not going to the festivals themselves. So, but I always try to recognize that, and I think the quality of short film has been upped quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, we've always said, like, in the last 10 years, the term student film used to be a bit of a dirty word, because student films used to be very kind of like, oh, okay, like they might be skilled in the cinematography, but not necessarily in the script. But now I think with an increase on film schools and kind of film courses, they get access to a lot of equipment, which, when they've graduated, they may not be able to kind of have easy access to. So with student films, definitely have kind of got a lot better. I think also short films in general for us, we kind of, because we're dealing with so many, and we've got 21 years worth of kind of archive that we've kind of seen all the data that we can look at. And the biggest kind of, I suppose, interest for us is runtime. So, back 10, 15 years ago, 20 minutes was a standard for a short film. And then HD came in, and this is, again, showing my age. There used to be HD specific film festivals because it was new. And because everyone was buying the Canon 5D and 7D, you could shoot as well as, take stills, which meant that filmmakers were suddenly going to 15 minutes and under for their short film. But then we had the boost of like loads of people making proof of concept as short films, which meant they kind of went back up to 20 plus. So we've kind of seen this kind of wave. I think the thing that I'm always keen to say is I don't really care what a budget is for a short film or who's in it. It's story. And some of the brilliant short films that we've seen, they don't always have to be this kind of meaningful, impactful, gutsy drama. It can be a short, funny piece, or it can be a poignant piece, or like a really touching piece. And we've seen a lot of films recently, which I think is kind of indicative of perhaps people are just wanting to make something. But we get a lot of short films that don't do anything. They kind of have a story, but then they just don't really tell it, or they kind of stop you at the most interesting point. And it can be a really dissatisfying. You're like, why have you stopped there? So we've definitely seen a lot more film being made, which is great. But perhaps sometimes the impetus for them making it is perhaps not always with a view of making a short film for the festival journey. So I think that's probably the biggest thing for us is kind of, there's a lot more films out there. Short films have the power to be impactful, but that doesn't necessarily mean, a social issue story. It could be just, it's a damn funny film. And some of the films that stick with us are those moments where you go, oh, I've not seen that perspective before, or that's a really humorous take on it. And that's why comedy does really well at festivals, because comedy is very subjective. Like what makes you laugh might not make me laugh, and vice versa, which is why there are very few comedy specific festivals out there, because it's very tough. But the comedy block will always sell out first at festivals, as well as the short doc category, because comedy, people need to laugh, especially now. And then also with the short doc category, you get more bang for your buck. You can watch 6 to 10 short documentaries about something. You might know about those issues, or you might not. And you come out and you're suddenly like, wow, I've just learned 10 different things. And, you feel informed. So it's definitely, I think the stories are getting more varied, but not necessarily always kind of fine-tuned.
Canon XL1 guy, by the way, here. So that's what I shot on when I was shooting films. Nightmare. And it was always, we were always told under 15. It was always 12. 10 to 12 was the sweet spot. That didn't really matter. You're right. It's all about story. It's all about story. And
Absolutely.
You have that fundamental, everything else comes into play, right? So you mentioned budget. You didn't care about budget, but you are running a business.
Yeah.
And for filmmakers out there who might be interested in obtaining your services, what would you say is an ideal budget range for them to kind of hold on to that money to kind of be realistic about going out and about?
Yeah, so I mean, we're very specific with budgets in terms of the submission fee that we recommend a filmmaker spend. We're here to help them save money. We're here to kind of stretch that budget. So we roughly work to about £1,000 for across a year's worth of submission fee budget, which is about $1,200 on a good day. And that is us kind of going, right, that filmmaker is giving us £1,000 to stretch, and we stretch that as far as we can across a year, which, depending on the film that you have, let's say a live action short, that can get you between like 40 and 60 festivals that we're kind of stretching. But that's a year's worth of deadlines roughly, but can be up to 18 months worth of festivals, because obviously you might submit something now, it doesn't happen until next year, and vice versa. And then if you have like an animation festivals are free or cheap. So it means that 40 to 60 festivals turns into like 70 to 100 festivals for the same budget. Same if you have a queer film, same thing. A lot of European festivals in that community are free or cheap. So it's kind of very dependent on the film. But in terms of our services, we have different packages, and it's dependent on, first of all, filmmakers' budget that they have, but also how far they are into their circuit journey. So I'd say like the largest package we have is £2,000, which is where we're recommending festivals for a year, but actually kind of like with a bigger submission fee budget to £1,500. And then the smallest package we do is £800, which is where we're kind of going, it's a half strategy essentially. We're kind of like going £500 to stretch for submission fee budget, and 800 is for us to research and kind of like do that work for you. So we try and make it as accessible as we can. But we've just realized that filmmakers' budget is not what it used to be, but also it's a lot of work. And therefore we can kind of actually focus on the strategy side, because that's where we excel. And that's where we have a lot more filmmakers going, I can handle the submissions, I just need to be told where to submit. We're like, well, that's our shtick. So, we can kind of focus on that and help more filmmakers in turn as well.
I'm wondering what you feel, because you've been doing this a long time and you've seen them all come and go. I'm wondering what you feel about 48-hour film festivals and filmmaking projects like that. Are those healthy things for young filmmakers, or do you feel like just go out on your own and make your own thing happen?
I think they're good because they put your back against the wall. And I think it's a good way to exercise and flex that creative muscle. I think people should be making stuff anyway, but by themselves, off a weekend with friends, that they can just kind of pool their creative talents and their equipment. But I also think that having the fire under your ass is quite a healthy thing. Like, because the thing is, it's a 48-hour film challenge. You might make something that you're really proud of, or you might make something that you go, it's okay, for what it is, for the prompts that we got for that particular competition, and you play it in front of the rest of the filmmakers, and then that's it. You can just put it to bed and you can delete it and you just ignore it. So I do think it's really healthy, because it gives you the impetus, because sometimes I think filmmakers just go into stasis. They kind of get like project overload where they're like, I've got this script and I really want to make it, but I don't have the budget, or I don't have the cast, or I don't have the location. And you can kind of just get hung up on that. Whereas actually kind of going, I'm going to do a 48-hour film challenge. I don't care what I make. I'm just doing something. Because I think it can ignite something in other projects. And I'm from a script writing background. So there's a thing that they call, I'm going to horribly paraphrase it. It's to cure a sickling child. So essentially what you do as a writer is you have two projects you're working on. You work on one until you get to a roadblock and there's something that you just can't fix. You can't kind of figure out the solution. So you have another project that you turn to keep your brain turning over. And what happens is when you're working on the other project is suddenly you go, I figured out the solution for the script that's ill. And then you kind of go back to it. So you're kind of bouncing, because it also means that you're freeing up your mind, because sometimes the solutions come to you when you're doing the most inane things. I used to bake a lot when I was writing scripts, because it's a task that you can do, muscle memory, and then suddenly your mind will just wander and just go, oh yeah, that's a solution, and you can just jot something down. So I think it's the same with filmmaking. Even if you're just reading a fellow filmmaker's script to give them feedback, or if you're giving edit notes or anything, or just going to a film festival, even when you don't have a film in the festival, I think is really, really beneficial, because it's networking. You're seeing what's out there, and you're not going to like everything. No one does.
Yeah.
But you can watch it and just go, oh, okay.
The writer room is I worked with a production company that had multiple writing rooms at one point, and we used to go get a cup of Joe and a donut, and free your mind
amazing
for a little bit, and then walk into the other room. Don't walk back into this room. Walk into the other room and see if that jars your creativity, because it is energy, right? It's a flow of energy. It's creative energy that keeps balancing. You'll find I think one of the great things about the 48-hour film festival is you gravitate to a community, and that community becomes who you're going to do a lot of stuff with, and they're all creative minds, so you get that creative energy flowing, and it just keeps on flowing.
Definitely. And also, you never know, who you work with or who you meet, or you might watch another one of the 48-hour films and kind of go, the script in that is brilliant, and then you talk to the script writer, and then you end up building a collaboration. So I think it's kind of why we do promote filmmakers attending festivals, even if they have been rejected, which I realize is quite tough. But if you can go, you don't need to be invited to network. You just turn up. I always say that you can stop being a filmmaker, but you can't stop being an audience member, because you're still a lover of film. And you can go to a festival and you can still network. You can still work that room. You can still see the Q&As. And again, like I say, you're not going to like everything. We go to festivals and we just kind of look at each other and go, oh, they picked this. Interesting.
How did that get there?
But at the same time, it's like you see the audience reaction. You're like, oh, okay, so that's why they picked it. It makes sense. But it's so important that, I think it's very easy in a hugely competitive landscape like film. It's very easy to slip into that kind of, snidey of like, oh, I didn't get selected, so why should I go support? And you're like, these festivals are nothing without filmmakers. You make the work that they're sharing, and they're the platform, but vice versa. A
lot of them run workshops and classes too that are so beneficial to filmmakers.
And panelists that you might not get access to anywhere else. And I just did a panel at Floppy Jasper, and the variety of guests on there is always amazing. Like, you've got Grammy nominated producers in music, you've got people that worked in industrial light and magic, people that are there for you to engage with. Like, they're actually saying, like, I'm asking questions on the stage, but come up to me afterwards, tell me what you need, tell me what you want to ask, and and they will.
Of all the people I've ever asked this question of, and I always ask this is one question I ask everybody, I really, really am kind of interested in your answer to this. What do you love about independent film? What is it about independent film that you have made it your life's mission to make sure people see?
Oh, that's a big question. I think the thing that I love about independent film is that it does what it wants. I'm very much a case of I don't watch a lot of mainstream cinema because I know what it is. So I think independent film for me is exciting because it just bristles with a different energy. Like, and it's also not scared to bring people to the table that aren't those big names. So when we're watching stuff for our slate, and we have a variety, we've got, known directors, we've got films with famous names in it. But again, for me, it's story. Like, and we've turned down stuff with big names in it because I'm like, it just doesn't say anything, and I think it's the stories that are being told for independent films that I just think are more accessible. I just think they're more exciting, and seeing filmmakers cut their teeth and seeing them grow, because we've got a lot of return clientele. So, when they come back to us and we go, well, actually, I thought your last project was brilliant, but this, you superseded. Like, this is brilliant. And like that, it's because they're choosing to tell the stories they want to tell. They're not trying to do the mainstream thing of let's tick all the boxes and this is in vogue right now, so let's do this. So I think it's just hearing the stories that where the stories have heart, and where they're not scared to pull punches because they haven't got some exec breathing down the neck.